I get the benefit of talking to a lot of interesting people in esports by proxy of this content. And honestly, it's something that I take for granted a lot, but it's not until I talk to somebody in person that things kind of really hit me. And today I got the chance to talk to somebody that, quite honestly, I've kind of looked up to within the esports space for quite a long period of time. No, I'm not going to say who they are, what they do, etc. If people wanted to talk to me on camera, we talk on camera. This was more of just like a lunch, get to know you, pick your brain type thing. And there's quite a few things that I left the conversation with that I want to talk about that are related to like the business of low esports and low esports in general. And given that the news cycle is fairly slow right now, it felt like the right time to do it. Also, there are two news articles out right now, nothing to do with North America, that I'm actually able to weave into this video. So it's kind of an all for one. The first part of this, I can actually relate to my own content. Over the last few weeks, I've seen obviously a pretty large flux of people coming in. To those that are new around here, thank you for watching in any capacity. But the demographic makeup might surprise you, or it won't at the same time. You would think I'm mostly a US content creator. Yes, as of late, I've been making more international content than necessarily LCS, purely because we have nothing going on in the news right now. But my viewership definitely skews less American than you would think. I think at the most this year, it's been like 30 some percent. Part of that is due to the videos that like really pop off. It's mostly Korean driven. T1, New Jeans from the World's opening ceremony last year. But it is emblematic of a much wider point that everybody's told me, and I know is like partially true, in that nobody really knows if North American League of Legends is salvageable. And like that's an optimistic point of view relative to many other people. Like, honest to God, stop and like actually have the conversation about like declining viewership and what all of this means for all of us in North America. Well, at best, it stabilizes at a much lower level. But the question is, can that be okay? Like, is that fine? I think Riot actually sets the precedent on that coming up. Don't forget, they paid 100 Thieves out for their slot and still allowed them to stay in the league. Now, there are other partners that are still here that obviously have their franchise payments. But if 100 Thieves were to magically stay around, say I get my wish, what does that mean? Well, if they're allowed to stay and they don't have to ever pay the franchise payment, why would anyone want that? Like if you're TL, if you're Cloud9, etc., you'd rather get your money back, get the payout for the slot, and then everybody's a partner role. The question is whether Riot wants to dish that money out or not. But say in a hypothetical world, Riot does pay out for all the slots. Is that new version of League sustainable? And my answer still is and always has been, absolutely, yeah. It's just not what we think of right now. When you think of like Worlds Finals and these much bigger events in low esports, quite honestly, like that's just not going to happen here in North America. And if you can take solace in that, if you can be comfortable with what North American League of Legends is in its current form, then yeah, it could all work out. It's a scaled down, like kind of niche hobby in the United States. I mean, people aren't playing the game. Just look at the attention this offseason in Europe versus North America. I mean, it's just pretty night and day. Once you remove all the venture capital from everything, yeah, technically this whole thing is sustainable, but like, can you ever really go back to an era without it anymore? I don't know. I mean, I hope so, obviously. But when you look at what our biggest creators in North America are doing in terms of Disguised Toast and compare that to the biggest creators that Europe has in terms of Gotaga, Bai, Kadril, and beyond, yeah, like it's not even close. We're playing in the minor leagues and they're playing in the major leagues, despite us having arguably the same results internationally. And as a content creator in the space, it puts you in a pretty interesting predicament. I'm not going to make a dedicated video on TikTok, but the ban, not going to lie to you, it has me quite scared. While again, the majority of my audience is still US and Canada based, it's not insignificant the audience that I have around the world, because that's kind of indicative of where esports is just heading. You have to be an international League of Legends figure if you want to try and be in the conversation at all. For the longest time, my strategy on TikTok and on YouTube was like purely focus on North America. And more YouTube, you can get away with it at least a little bit more, especially when I have series like The Pit and The Rendezvous, because there's really nobody else in the space kind of doing those types of things right now. So it's a very niche market that I'm able to capitalize on. But on TikTok, any video where I simply talk about North America, that whether it's the teams, the players, etc., is 1/10, maybe 1/15 or 1/20th the viewership. And one of the questions that was asked of me during lunch today was like, if I had the chance to follow anything else or like pursue like general gaming, tech, other trends like that, would I? And my answer is, to be quite honest, I wish I could. I wish I had the ability to talk about pretty much anything with a genuine level of interest the way I do the things that I love. I just so happen to be born in the region that is the smallest market and genuinely love the niche markets that pay the least and get the least amount of attention compared to their international counterparts. And that's just unlucky, but at the same time, like one thing that I value is honesty in my content creation. What makes what I do possible is because I genuinely love it, regardless of the size, regardless of the amount or anything else. And much like 100 Thieves' involvement in North America, unless they're gone, I don't have the ability to start paying attention elsewhere and like purely caring about other things. It's just not who I am. I see things through all the way till the end. Insert the Johnny Depp Pirates of the Caribbean stepping off the sinking ship. Before I say the second part of the conversation that really piqued my interest, I want to be clear. In these conversations and lunches and things that I do with other people in the space, I do ask questions of other people and like want to know like their story and hear about them. I just don't, when it comes to talking like this, I feel more comfortable talking about like the things that I share about me, because then it's not giving off, it's not like telling other people's stories and telling their stuff. So if it seems like I'm talking about myself a lot, that's because I'm intentionally keeping other people's information for themselves, industry stuff, etc. Like all that's none of this video's business. The second topic has to do with my goals and my dreams in the space of League of Legends and why I do all this. And for those that are new around here, I've always said I try to view myself as like a Dan Humphrey type. If you don't know who Dan Humphrey is, please go watch Gossip Girl. But basically, he writes his way into a society that he previously had no involvement in and felt like it was an exclusive club that nobody else could gain access to. And that's kind of what I see my content as, is like I could yap for hours and maybe that yapping is going to be my way into things. Clearly it's working so far, but obviously there's a long road ahead. So like, what is the ultimate goal? Is the dream of like having a New York City League of Legends team even possible? Especially in a space that quite honestly doesn't really embrace the sports model, at least locally here. Like esports is tied to a personality nowadays. Like that's going to be the future of this industry, whether we like it or not. It kind of always was, but in like a less in your face way. Nowadays, it's just bluntly obvious that like if you don't have a massive creator, you don't have anything. And would you even be able to create a brand? Say like if I was to do like this whole New York City thing and like try and pursue it, one, I'm not big enough to do so, and I acknowledge that. But is it possible in esports to create a brand that withstands the main face of it going away? And realistically, the answer right now is no. But I also don't know if there's anybody in the space that has created a brand that isn't just like solely about them to a certain extent. Abi's org is Koi, Kameto is K-Corp. To even say like K-Corp are the French fans is like, well, okay, they're a subsection of the French fans, but like what distinguishes them from like Vitality? Well, it's realistically the people that they follow at the top of the org. It's the one thing in the US that we've always had the benefit of in terms of like geolocation, like our specific like cities, but nobody's really embraced it or been able to do it. So yes, I still do believe that you can have a localized team with the right person leading it, because you still do need that creator to start it off. But you need that creator from the jump to be dead set on, I am determined to build something that withstands my legacy and can stay without me. And that takes a specific building from the ground up that doesn't overutilize the creator, doesn't like make it all about them all the time. Even if it can be, like you have to wean it off pretty significantly and continue to introduce new people and introduce new talent, the same way that like Barstool like very much is Dave Portnoy, but like there's many new faces that kind of come and go throughout that. So how does that relate to like my dream? Well, how do you get big enough to the point where you can start something like that, but then also be able to separate it? The first thing you do is you don't take venture capital money. The one headline that I wanted to bring up was K-Corp did their whole like valuations of LEC teams, and I still stand by the statement, valuations are absolutely freaking meaningless. Cool, you know how much your company's worth if you were to sell it. If you're a sports owner, you shouldn't ever want to sell it. You should want it to be profitable and stand alone and increase your pay based on how much extra net revenue or net profit. Sorry, I'm thinking back to those sheep esports articles, which always mention revenue as a basis. And it's like revenue has nothing to do with it as a standalone thing. You have to use net profit, because say you make $50 million, but you spend 70, what the hell does your revenue matter? It doesn't. So when we sit here and say that like G2 is valued at X amount, but their merchandise sales are only 1%, but then K-Corp's like half the value of that, but makes like 40% in merchandising. Like one, I prefer K-Corp's model over G2's, and two, unless any of them are selling, it's all meaningless. And that's kind of the point of like ownership and sports ownership, is you want to build these things that last forever, that you never get rid of and get passed on from generation to generation. Like, that's a legacy that you're leaving. It might have to transcend different games and esports because this space is so young and we have no clue what the future holds of it. But like, if you're good enough, you'll be able to go to different games. So selfishly, how do I get there? Well, you kind of have to get in with the international crowd, or really start that local thing, but that requires a certain amount of money, of which we've already learned our lesson in the space. Don't take on VC, don't expand beyond your means. If you have the capability to do so yourself, fine, but like, do not look for external pressure on this type of thing. But that's why I'm going to talk about international League of Legends a little bit more and try and like shoehorn the NA narrative into it. The third and final thing that this lunch showed me is that how I view myself is drastically different than how everybody else views me to a certain extent. I don't think about the output of stuff that I do. I just think about, I have to have a video up every Monday, Wednesday, Friday on YouTube, and 2 TikToks a day every day. But like, when you take a step back and realize the grand scope of things, it's like you take 365 times 2, and I've uploaded many days of 3 videos. Take that times 4. That's an ungodly amount of videos that I put on the internet, just on TikTok alone. People are going to see me as an entertainer, and that was clear based on the conversation that I had today. Is like, when people view you as a content creator, like, that's different than how I view myself. When I'm just making this stuff and putting it out there, it's like, I'm just a guy that loves League of Legends and loves North America. That's all I am. You don't put a label on it elsewhere, and you don't stop to realize like where things kind of are to a certain extent. But for me, I can't think about it that way. Like, I literally can. Like, the ego that I think people develop whenever you start thinking of yourself like that, I just like, that's a bad rabbit hole to go down. So I'm just going to continue to see myself as the guy that loves League. Will that get me in trouble by not like respecting where I ultimately am and like kind of devaluing it? Yeah. You see that occasionally on Twitter whenever I say some shit and don't like realize the full potential of things. And it's like, ugh. Might have worded that a little bit differently had I thought about it more, but then again, you also want to stay true and honest to what got you here in the first place. So to wrap up what is probably a more rambly video than others that I've had on this channel, today made me realize that I truly am just like a guy that chose one hell of a weird niche to hyperfixate on the internet. To a certain extent, unlucky, because had I been doing this in any other region in the world, God only knows where it could take me. But at the same time, I wouldn't trade it for the world. Are the dreams that I'm building towards realistic? No, but I also don't have a time frame on this type of thing. Like, the benefit of like me being in the position that I am and the career that I chose outside of esports is that I don't really have to worry about when shit happens. As much as I would like to eventually, have a more established presence in the space. Like, I would never quit my full-time job, but dude, could you imagine if I was the guy that worked at Disney and like did finance there, but also was a content creator for like 100 Thieves? Oh man, it'd be so much fun to like spend weekends traveling for events and shit and like trying to promote the LTA and like grow a brand and grow something that's just bigger than me. Because I guess that's kind of what I'm working towards in terms of a next step. I want my content to be about something more than just me, which I kind of feel like it is right now. I mean, I just sat in front of a camera and talked for 20 minutes about myself, so not the greatest start, but I think that's kind of what you have to do to get the ball rolling. It's just a matter of getting yourself to the point where somebody else is willing to take a chance, and then you try and grow this thing together. So if the person I had lunch with today is watching this, still around in any capacity, thank you for lunch. I appreciate it. The conversations that come up with industry people are well beyond what I'm able to have with other people, because nobody's able to challenge perspectives and opinions of other things that I have, because I mean, nobody else is really doing this except for people that are actually there. And in New York, there's really not much of an esports scene, at least not yet. Maybe we'll get there. New York is basically a better Paris, right?